And welcome into the Thursday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Joe Rexrode, fresh off what I can assume to be minutes of sleep. Joe, how we doing this morning?
I decided not to go to bed. I just replayed a bunch of basketball games.
Good for you.
I just went back and made up my own little highlight reel, and then I put it on TikTok, and I kind of did a little dance to it. So
you are a big TikToker.
By the way, Big Joe, apparently Big Joe loves college hoops as much as I do. He just sat there all day, and then tweeted at me and stuff, and took pictures of me. But he was on press row, man.
I did see some visual evidence of him being there and taking pictures of you. So I can confirm that happened.
And I didn't realize it was you and Max yelling at me. I couldn't see. I heard Rexrode, and I looked up, and then but then I saw Max later. So thanks for the shout.
Keyser, how we doing? What's going on?
Good morning, guys. Doing well. Glad to be with y'all.
Glad to have you with us, Keyser. By the way, speaking of the SEC tournament, tune into 102.5, 106.3 The Game for updates of the SEC men's basketball tournament today and tomorrow, presented by Toyota. Fuel your adrenaline at Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. Also brought to you by Guinness, thenewcumberland.com, Volunteer Hose and Gasket, and Sloan's Motorcycle and ATV. So, Joe, let's start there. The SEC tournament underway. It was a quick stay for Vanderbilt here. Got off to a bad start in the first half, and we're not able to recover against Texas yesterday. What did you make of that win for Texas, the loss for Vanderbilt, and what that means for those two teams moving forward here?
Yeah, tough for Vanderbilt. I know some Vanderbilt fans are freaking out. I got to calm down my guy, Joey Garrison. Joey Garrison, my former coworker at the Tennessean, Vanderbilt alum, huge fan, covers the White House for USA Today. So, but from afar, he is, the Titans, and Vandy in particular, he's lives and dies with them. He's like, well, we don't deserve to be in. I'm like, well, you're going to get in. Vanderbilt's going to be in this tournament, barring all kinds of craziness in the next few days, which happens sometimes. But I've got them still getting a bye, and they're going to be okay. But they have lost 3 straight games. They're not playing very well. Grant Huffman and MJ Collins are banged up. They need that to get better. According to Mark Byington, they both just have ankle twists, so you just need some time. So they're going to get this is a thing. It always stinks to lose in these things. And you want to compete against teams of your league, especially, they had a pretty good crowd yesterday for Vanderbilt, and it's too bad it's over that quickly. But it might end up being a blessing for them, to get this time. And sometimes teams go through these things and get to the last day and they just beat the crap out of each themselves. And that could happen certainly this year in this tournament. But Vanderbilt will be fine. They'll be in. And I think it's actually better to be like a 10. They could be an 11, but I think they're going to be a 10 than it is to be an 8 or a 9 and be lined up to play a 1 if you win, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't think they were going to get to the 7 line anyway. I guess it would have been possible they went nuts, but I think they're going to be fine. Texas keeps itself alive. And, of course, we get a little Texas A&M today now, and no love lost there, especially after, sort of like the handshake line with the game that Texas won at home. But you got 14 SEC teams in there that are alive, and Oklahoma winning too. Those are the 2 weakest ones, and they both won. So they are trying their darndest to get 14 in. I have my doubts they're actually going to get 14 in, but they're trying.
They're trying, and Joe, it just felt like in the first half specifically, Texas got to whatever they wanted to get to on the offensive side of things. Vanderbilt could not answer on the other side. And when you dig yourself the hole that they dug in the first half, it's just going to be pretty hard to come back from that. And that's basically how that played out yesterday. You were down in such a hole in the first half that it's difficult to dig your way out of that in the second.
Yeah. Texas has, look, they got a top 10 pick and in freshman Trey Johnson. And so he did some of his stuff yesterday. Sometimes I'm like, man, you can't take that shot. But he shoots well enough that, ultimately you give him the green light. Vanderbilt just missed some shots that you expect to. And also, Texas's length really bothered him. I thought, Texas, look, this is, riding Terry. This is Rick Barnes' defense here. This is still like basically the same DNA defensively with a lot of length, and definitely bothered Vanderbilt a lot yesterday.
So looking at today's slate, you've got, as you mentioned, Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Kentucky coming up tonight, Mississippi State, Missouri, Arkansas, Ole Miss. From the eyes of Joe Rexrode, the world's leading bracketologist, what's on the mind today as we look at today's slate of the SEC tournament?
Well, if Texas beats Texas A&M, I mean, I'm putting them in the field. I mean, they that would be 2 over them. And Texas A&M's a 3 seed right now. That'd be 2 wins over them. Their non-league was not good. They didn't really schedule anybody, and so that's why, like Oklahoma, for example, Oklahoma beat Michigan, St. John's. They have good wins before the SEC. Texas really doesn't, but with some other wins that they also have, and look, Vanderbilt's a good win. I mean, that's a quad 1 win for you on a neutral site. So I think Texas is in with a win. If Oklahoma beats Kentucky, I mean, then I just said I'd have my doubts they'll get 14 in, but I think it's going to be hard for them not to get 14 in if Texas and Oklahoma win today. So, we'll see. I mean, I also have my doubts a little bit that Texas will win over Texas A&M. But also in these conference tournaments, what you see a lot is, like think about Tennessee last year with Mississippi State. Before a team gets fatigued, it does seem to be an advantage to play one day before. Get that game under your belt on the court, and then the higher seed comes in cold, and you see a lot of upsets. So we'll see. But yeah, those two are I think could possibly punch their tickets today. And then of course the 1 seed battle royale starts tomorrow with Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee.
Does Tennessee have to win the tournament in your mind to get the 1 seed?
Well, they need Auburn to win. So
yes.
So they need Auburn to win their first game so they can get a win over Auburn. You get a win over Auburn on a neutral court. Remember, Alabama has a win at Auburn and Florida has a win at Auburn. And wins over Auburn, like they've lost 4 games this year.
They don't happen very often.
Yeah, so you got to have that win. If you get that win on Saturday, then you also, I mean, I think you need the other 2 teams to crap out. I think it's almost more important. Yeah, more important than winning Sunday and winning the tournament is win 2 games, because it'll be a good win if you win Friday. I'm trying to even think what they're lined up for. I don't have it in front of me. Mississippi State, I think, right, would be the best. Or am I wrong about that? I might be wrong about that. It was supposed to be Vanderbilt, so actually it would be Texas A&M.
I believe that is correct. I'm pulling up the bracket right now.
It would so Texas A&M would be the the potential win for them there. That's a great win. Beat Auburn, but then more importantly than winning Sunday would be Florida and Bama lose as early as possible. Don't let them get any more quality wins. That's what you're rooting for. And everybody's rooting today. I mean, I doubt it'll happen, but Houston plays Colorado today. Colorado upset West Virginia yesterday. And so if Houston could lose that game and not have any quality wins in the Big 12 tournament to help their resume, that it's possible that 2 of these SEC, 2 of these 3 could jump to that top line.
Did you see your boy Greg Sankey walking around yesterday at the tournament? Did he give you the side eye?
I didn't see him. Did you see him?
No.
Yeah, I don't think he's. This is he shows up for the big ones, man. He shows up. I'm sure he'll be here today. But yeah, I did not see him. I did read. There was a piece in the Post and Courier. Scott Hamilton, not our Scott Hamilton, but columnist out there, who did a good Q&A with him, and Sankey was talking about being villainized by people.
Oh, good.
In the media, and I'm like, look, man, if we can get rid of this auto bids thing, I will, dude. I'll wear a Greg Sankey T-shirt and put a crown on your head and call you the king of the world. I mean, it's just, Greg Sankey's a great commissioner for the SEC. Done a lot of good things, and when it comes down to it, in sports and business, you got to be ruthless. Sometimes to win, and he has been. Now, I'm just saying, you get rid of these auto bids, dunk on that whole idea, you're my hero.
Well, he doesn't know what those
my
are.
Hero by the Foo Fighters.
He does know what the allocations are. He doesn't know what the auto bids are.
That's right. I do like the allocations is a good yes.
Those athletic directors, they've certainly brought that up. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah. So, I assume he usually talks at some point during this thing. So I assume he'll do that, and maybe he'll do what Brett Yormark did and, tell everybody how we need to expand the NCAA tournament, even though we damn well don't.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's a less popular idea among like actual people out there than that. Like college football playoff expansion is one thing. I think it's stupid. The tournament's already at a perfect size. We don't need to make it any larger. Like if you're not one of the 68 best teams, I'm sorry, you're not getting in the tournament.
So I get so mad with like Seth Davis, my who's covered college basketball for a long time, and he writes these things like in support of, and the justification is that D1 keeps expanding, but that's at the lowest levels. That those teams aren't getting more bids. All we're doing is we're going to make sure that that Texas and Oklahoma are guaranteed to be in, but also North Carolina, and how about let's throw in like Pitt and Wake Forest.
No thanks.
Teams that it's just like look at how questionable. I mean, North Carolina is in my field today. Okay. I got North Carolina next to last team in. They have one quad one win this year. I feel embarrassed of my bracket to have them in, but like I couldn't not have them in. And so now you're going to tell me let's make it so they're clearly safe with that performance. No.
615-737-1025, our phone number. We are off and running here on Robby and Rexrode. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll have the best and worst things in sports coming up later this hour at 6:45. Stilly will be with us today at 7 o'clock instead of tomorrow. So a Thursday visit from Stillman at 7 o'clock. Charles Robinson at 8 o'clock for his weekly visit. The Titans continued the revamping of their offensive line yesterday. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode broadcasting live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on the program. The Players' Championship beginning today in the PGA Tour. Rexrode will have a breakdown of each player later in the program, so looking forward to that. He's spent countless hours putting that together on The Athletic.
8 o'clock hour.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
We need the whole hour.
He broke down the plane of Scotty Scheffler's swing, so we'll see what that looks like a little bit later in the program. Joe, the Titans continuing to add to their offensive line and revamp the protection for whoever their quarterback is going to end up being, which continues to be a mystery. Kevin Zeitler signing a 1-year, $9 million deal with the Titans yesterday. A veteran presence on the offensive line. Zeitler, 35 years old. Joe, we talked about him with Kuharski on our program yesterday. Kuharski, a big fan of the idea of signing Zeitler, and that's exactly what the Titans do. So, it's not necessarily been an overly busy week for the Titans in free agency, although there were some more moves made yesterday. We'll get to some more of those coming up here in just a few minutes. But they have revamped their offensive line. You've got Dan Moore Jr. now on the left side of the tackle spot, J.C. Latham moving to right side, and the addition of Kevin Zeitler coming in to play right guard. What do you make of those additions, the revamping of this offensive line, and the addition of Kevin Zeitler specifically yesterday, Joe?
Yeah, look, I like the addition of Zeitler. Kuharski said yesterday that was what he was looking at right guard. I think it's a good idea for the Titans to get another guard.
I agree.
So there you go. I'm just helping out the YouTube chat, fulfilling your requests. But it's funny because with Zeitler, I think this is a kind of a common thing. You can't read too much into these things, like fan bases and offensive linemen, unless they're stars. Like Lions fans are like, "Oh, got to upgrade over Zeitler, man." Last year it's like, this is the best offensive line in the league. Got to upgrade that spot.
Yeah.
But he's been a good player, and it's an upgrade. He's a starter. He's a starting level player, and so now you look at the right side. You have Zeitler and Latham, and again, I continue to. To me, it's like we've gone through any sort of like analysis. We could probably go through on Dan Moore. We're just going to find out. He's got this whole off season, and he's got all this time with Bill Callahan coming up, and if that can be solid, then you definitely have an offensive line that has a chance to. I mean, I think to be like middle of the pack. The middle of the pack, if that's the case, would be obviously a huge upgrade. We'll see. I mean, center is also still a concern, right?
Yep.
Cushenberry play next year. How much does he play next year? How effectively does he play next year? I mean, that's why. So like Brunskill, for example, like, do they have another plan there other than, like you can always do like the Brunskill 11 stuff, or is there somebody else that they are looking at?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, because we don't know how long Cushenberry is going to be out. You would have to assume a big guy with an Achilles. It's going to creep into next year fairly significantly. I mean, I think you have to just operate under that assumption. And then if it doesn't, great. You've got him there and you got him available to you. But I think when you're talking about that specific injury with a big guy, it's hard for me to imagine him being like back, full strength, ready to go early into the year, right? Like, I mean, look, we talk about Achilles injuries with smaller guys, and it takes them sometimes, Joe, a year or two to get back to full strength off of that. So I think the Cushenberry thing is a big, big point of consideration as they move forward here. The Zeitler move specifically, I really like. I know some Titans fans were freaking out that he's 35. I get it. He's 35. He's not a spring chicken out there. I think he's played fairly well. And, Joe, one thing that I think if you look at the signings that they've made, and we're going to get to the Draymond Jones signing as well here in just a second, but there's a pretty common theme that I notice when you start to talk about all these guys, whether that's Xavier Woods, whether that's Dan Moore, they're very available. Zeitler, he plays almost every game. We talk about in football, you're never going to come across like a clean injury history. It's just really hard to do when you're playing high level football to have a clean sheet on the injury front. But pretty much all of these guys that they're signing right now, Joe, have pretty good history of being available in this league. I think that's clearly something that is important to Brinker and Borgonzi and his staff as they're looking at the players that they bring in. I mean, Zeitler, 16 games, 17 games, 17 games, 16 games. It's all over the map with these guys in terms of pretty consistently being available.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously when things don't work out in whatever way for a team, a lot of times you see like, let's do the other thing. A lot of times you see it with coaches, tough coach or friendly player coach. This is one of those things where, yeah, it's a good idea this should be your policy. Now, granted, remember Brinker, you mentioned Brinker in there. He was part of the crew last year who, were getting some guys who had injury histories and
was he there?
It didn't work out. Yeah, he was. I believe he was. But yeah, no, I think look, John Robinson had some success with you can get value if you are willing to gamble a little bit on that stuff. And then obviously had some very much not success. And so I think it's going to be impossible for that to be your strict across the board policy at all times.
Yeah.
I think you might cost yourself some talent, if that's generally how you go about things over the long haul, you're probably going to be better off. And again, I go back to Brinker. I mean, I don't know like how functional it is or, I mean, we're going with the very simple data of did you play in games? Remember though, that data, for example, with Julio Jones, he had only had one season in which he had any disruption at all. Now it was the season before he came here, but still, like we talked about how durable he had been in his career when he came in here. And it turns out that the year before injury was like a problem and continued to be,
Yep.
But does Brinker's injury model, much discussed injury model, does that like come into play and help at all? Again, we're just going with, I mean, these guys play every week. There are some people, Zeitler comes from the Lions offensive line. There are people who play who have a terrible injury. Like Frank Ragnow, their center, has like throat fractures and plays through that. You know what I mean? Like it's like
he's insane.
He played.
Yeah.
So yeah, he played, but it doesn't mean he's been healthy. But obviously in this league, you're always everybody. Let's quote Vrabel, 100% injury rate. And but I think it is, I mean, especially for Titans fans who are sick of, all those years of all these guys being hurt and all these players who'd never play or barely play. It's got to be refreshing.
Well, we've talked all week long about, my trepidation with Latham moving to the right side and what does that mean for how they've identified him. One thing I'm not going to sit here and deny, like their offensive line is better. Okay. When you're replacing Nicholas Petit-Frere and you've got Latham on the right, Dan Moore, we'll find out exactly what he is as a starting level player for the Titans on the left. I like Zeitler. I think he's a good addition. There's no doubt in my mind that this offensive line is better. I guess the question is going to be how much better is it? And can it get to a point where, like, I'm not asking this offensive line to be, top 5 in the league, but can it be like middle of the pack? Because middle of the pack is an enormous upgrade over what they've had the last 3 years on that offensive line. And middle of the pack, Joe, may get you to a spot where, again, depending on who the quarterback is, you can see a functional offense. You can see what Brian Callahan's offense is supposed to be without every time you drop back to pass, you're peeling the quarterback off the ground. I mean, it'd be nice to see that this year.
Yeah, no question. It's better. Like there's no question it's better. I mean, look, the amount of which it's better is, Dan Moore is, it's going to come down to that, right? I mean, so if last year's gains mean there's more ahead, and again, there's Skoronski, that whole side, you got two pairings on. You got Skoronski Moore and you got, Latham Zeitler. Center still really a big deal. So, I mean, that's a concern. And I wonder, if there's more to come on that front, but no question they're better. Yeah. And then there's that little pesky thing you brought up about QB. That's kind of important. They're all gone.
Yeah, quarterbacks are quickly going off the table here. We'll get into that coming up next. Also, another signing that the Titans made yesterday on the defensive side of the ball that is very intriguing. We'll get into that as well. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. I got some tickets to give away to see Aziz Ansari at the Ryman Auditorium on Thursday, March the 20th. Be caller 5-615-737-1025. Let's head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Cam to the program. Cam, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, fellas. How are you?
Doing great.
Good.
Hey, so the other day I was listening to Stillman and Company, and I haven't really heard anybody else really talk about this, but Dan Moore was tied, I think, for the most sacks given up last year. But Stillman had brought up that he had played 1,100 snaps last season, as opposed to the person that he tied with, who I believe was a Titans offensive lineman, who had only played literally half, like 600 snaps, as opposed to the 1,100 snaps. I mean, that's kind of a big, you give up 12 snaps or 12 sacks, which even PK said all of those, I think it was Friday, all of those, or maybe it was yesterday, couldn't be given up to him.
Right.
Sometimes it was inside pressure. Sometimes it was the quarterback holding on to the ball too long. But you're talking about 12 sacks, not even, all of them are responsible to him technically. And he played 1,100 snaps last season. Is that not impressive? I'm going to hang up and listen.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Cam. I think Stillman was kind of comparing the line as a whole, Joe, and was talking about how, Petit Frere and the pace that he was on and the amount of sacks he was on pace to give up. There's no doubt that Dan Moore, J.C. Latham, that combo is a big upgrade over Nicholas Petit Frere. I don't think anybody's arguing against that. The question is, you've thrown out the numbers this week on Dan Moore. How much of the improvement that we saw in those numbers last year is trending towards what he's going to be? This is another example, Joe, of the Bill Callahan part of this. Can Bill Callahan take what he has been in Pittsburgh and continue to build on that and continue to help him evolve as a player? As I brought up last segment, I think one of the things you like about Dan Moore, if you're the Titans, is exactly what Cam just talked about, and that is how many snaps he's played and how much he's been available. That's a big plus for him.
Yeah, look, no one is sitting here, at least I don't think so, saying, see, those sack numbers mean that he's worse than Nicholas Petit Frere. No, no one's saying that, right? Of course, there's always context that's important. Number of snaps, as we've talked about, 5 of the 12 are attributed to two of the best, two of the best 3, 2 of the best 4 pass rushers in the league.
It doesn't get much deeper than that yet.
Something like that, so the 2 best. Quarterback, then we get in the whole quarterback thing. It gives me flashbacks of last year when people wanted to blame Levis for all his sacks. I'm like, yeah, Levis sometimes has some bad pocket awareness, but let's not candy coat what this offensive line is, folks. In a lot of cases, he's running for his life right after the snap because he has to. So, but look, I don't think anybody in the right mind is claiming that Dan Moore is worse because he has the biggest number, that he's the worst tackle. Now, over the duration of his career, those numbers are, those numbers, the pressures and sacks being the worst in the league in his whole career, that says something to me.
Yeah.
That doesn't say nothing to me, but I think you just hit it. It's like last year, he improved. The underlying numbers, the pressures, things like that, improved, were solid. Pass block win rate was solid. So, what does that mean? And then it's also the context of, the Steelers letting him walk. They have drafted 2 tackles, and one of them was hurt last year, which is why he was still a starter. It'd be interesting because right now I think he would have been their 3rd guy last year.
Yep.
And so he would have been their 3rd guy last year with 3 terrible years on his record. So he probably would have gone for a lot cheaper, actually, in this period. I still, to me, it's like, I don't know. I want 3 tackles I can rely on. I don't love the fact that the Steelers let him walk, but they weren't going to pay him starter money. So he's going to be, I'm sure, an improvement. To me, he's one of the most interesting things about when this season begins, this team starts playing football. And a key point, is he going to be a problem, or is he actually going to be sound and solid? Can he be a middle of the pack left tackle in the NFL? I think that's asking a lot based on his history, but we'll see.
The Titans make a move on the defensive side of the ball yesterday. Draymond Jones coming in. He was a third-round pick back in 2019 of the Denver Broncos, has played in Denver, has since played in Seattle, which is where he spent the last 2 seasons. And Joe, another guy that for the most part in his career has been very durable and available for his team. So, again, the trend kind of continuing there. He's played 17 games in each of the last 2 years. I'm not comparing him to this guy in terms of the production.
I know what you're going to say.
But he is, like, in terms of the skill set he brings to the table and his versatility and his ability to move to the edge and move, into the interior. It is kind of like Danico Autry, right? Like that's kind of like what he brings to the table. The production is just not at Danico Autry's level. But he had 6.5 sacks in 2022, 4.5 in 2023, 4 last year. So, look, Draymond Jones is not some superstar rusher here, but they needed to address that spot, and his ability to play in different spots, I think, is intriguing.
Yep, I like him. I like the signing. I like him. He's a tough, good football player, and there is definitely the Nico comparison is apt. So yeah, I like that one for sure. They needed to do that because it's a thing. Now you kind of, obviously they have to actually get pure edges, on this defense. They need to do that, but this helps a little bit with that, and you can move some people around. And Danico Autry was, again, this guy isn't Danico, but that type of player can be so valuable for a defense.
Yes, and just at this point, having some options to put out on the edge. They don't by any means need to be done there. Like, they still need to heavily address that as they go through the rest of the offseason here, but having some options to put out there, I think, is a really good thing. Mac Jones, Joe, is no longer available to be signed by the Titans. He is now backup quarterback in San Francisco, signing a 2-year deal with the 49ers. So Zach Wilson down to Miami. Mac Jones is out in San Francisco. Jacoby Brissett is in Arizona on a 2-year deal as a backup. So these kind of stopgap, bridge, 1 year, maybe stopgaps at the quarterback spot, or backup veteran quarterbacks to Cam Ward, are quickly going off the table, Joe. So some more quarterback movement yesterday. No Mac Jones to the Titans.
Yeah, at this point, you're talking. Again, we've been poo-pooing all the people talking about Levis starting next year. I'm still there, but I'm also like, boy, let me start adding this up. You're talking about backups, and so it's just hard for me to read this situation. Ron has texted us a couple times, says, in my opinion, Titans are telling everyone what they're doing by not telling everyone what they're doing by doing nothing at quarterback. It's hard. It's hard for me to look at this whole thing and not think that Cam Ward blew them away on his visit, and that's, or again, we just always say Cam Ward because everyone thinks he's QB1.
Yeah.
I'm not completely discounting Shedeur Sanders either, but a quarterback, I would guess Ward is going to be the pick at 1, right?
At this point, I hope so. Because I think I would rather see them draft Cam Ward in the first round and like Kyle McCord in the second round before I'd rather see, Will Levis play starting quarterback for the Titans next year. That's where I'm at.
Wow, man.
I've seen it. I don't need to see it again. That's just me.
So is it just that you hate players who wear the number 8? Did you have a rival in high school who wore the number 8 or something?
No, I don't think so. Maybe I'd have to go back and study that part of it, but
yeah,
I would like for the players that wear number 8 around here to be good at some point. That would help.
Oh my goodness! Now you're taking shots at Mariota. By the way, he's off the table.
Yeah,
Commanders back to the Commanders.
Veteran options are rolling, and apparently, Joe, apparently Kirk Cousins is sticking around in Atlanta. So there's that too. Not that I ever thought Kirk Cousins was coming here, but apparently he's sticking around in Atlanta.
At some point, it costs you to be such a good guy.
It does.
Like, if he was any sort of a jerk at all last year when he lost his job, then it'd be like, well, okay, we need to move on. But they're like, God, this guy's amazing. He's a great leader, and he's helped Michael. And I will say, I mean, it's, I feel bad for Kirk because I know he wants to go out there and I think, he'd get a starting job probably somewhere, but although there's got to be skepticism about the health, but it's not if you're the Falcons, are you 100% sure that Penix is like going to be like he take a big step? Also, do you feel like actually Cousins is going to be a lot healthier next year? Now you actually have two viable starters. I mean, it's not the dumbest thing I've ever heard of.
No, just I thought that Cousins would do whatever it took to like force his way out of there, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Yeah, he went in and talked to Arthur Blank, and he was so nice. But Arthur Blank's like, "I love you, man. You're like, you got to stay. Come on, Kirk."
I'm interested to get Charles's thoughts on that a little bit later in the program.
Yeah,
Joe, quickly.
That's one thing Charles was wrong about.
That is true. That is true. I didn't even think about that. Quickly, before we get to best and worst things in sports, a trade made by the Titans yesterday. Kenneth Murray sent to the Dallas Cowboys, basically for a pick swap. The Cowboys send a 6th-round pick to the Titans, and the Titans send their 7th-round pick, which I believe is 239th overall, and that frees up the room for Kenneth Murray there. What did you make of that deal?
Yeah, it's we've been talking about inside linebacker. Okay, it's probably first of all, I mean, I now think back to all the glowing things said about Kenneth Murray last year when he had some ups and downs. He made some plays and then he made some mistakes and things like that. But boy, I think this speaks pretty loudly about what they thought of him. And it's, again, this is another like acquisition from last offseason that clearly, just didn't work. So now what are they doing there? Is this a comment on Cedric Gray that they actually think he is a viable starting option? James Williams, or they're going to get somebody else. It seemed to me like they had a pretty clear starting two, and now not. So it has to say one of those things at least.
You would
don't know which one.
You would think. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. It is time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll do that coming up next. Jared Stillman will be with us at 7 o'clock. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, the game.
The best and worst of the sports week. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
On ESPN.
1025 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
This is the worst. You look like you're feeling sorry for yourself. You believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
He's one of one. He is him.
This is a Coke bottle. It's not a crystal ball.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Okay, let's go.
It is that time of the week. Time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Joe Rexrode, kick us off with your best and worst things in the world of sports.
Well, I'm not just going to go with, college basketball is awesome, March Madness and all that stuff, although this is March.
It is.
But I am going to be in the college basketball world, and you sent me this. I hope you weren't going to do this.
No.
My brother sent it to me before you did yesterday. My brother's a Virginia Tech grad. And, of course, he also sent it to me like, I hope we can keep Toby Lawal, but we probably can't. But this is a quote after the Hokies lost to Cal to end their season. That might be one of the greatest quotes of all time. He said, quote, talking about the expectations for Virginia Tech men's basketball and how that turned out. He said, quote, they thought we were going to be ass. I mean, we were still ass, but, we weren't that bad, end quote. It might be one of the greatest quotes.
One of the greatest quotes ever.
They thought we were going to be ass. I mean, we were still, but still absolutely amazing. So, Toby Lawal, you are my best in sports. My worst, I'll keep it there too. I complained a little bit in the first segment, but Brett Yarmark, and he won't be the last one, trying to push the expansion. Again, it's not everybody else's fault that you guys have decided to create 16, 18, whatever we're headed team conferences. Okay. But that's really, the cover of this is under the guise of, Division I, all this expansion. We have 300 whatever teams that keep. So how do you not expand the tournament? It's just this percentage of the tournament. Again, the vast, vast, vast majority, they're going to be stuck with the same number of automatic bids that it's not changing. Okay. You're just creating bigger conferences. You're not getting 2 bids for the CAA or the Patriots. So stop acting like this helps the little guy. It's because you want a higher percentage of your teams to get those automatic, those units, financial units from being in the tournament. No, don't mess up our tournament. And so the fight continues, but I mean, I'm definitely not optimistic that they're going to be able to keep it from like 76 at some point soon.
Yeah, not looking forward to that. Keezer, your best and worst things in the world of sports.
Yeah, I saw this story from, I believe, Mark Lazarus. Jonathan Tays looking to return next season, fellas. Read more about that. I know he had a previous story kind of talking about his adventures to get his health in check. But I thought that was a really unique story, just the way that he was talking about what he's gone through, and he still feels like he can do it. I don't know if he's going to sign next year or not, but that was a pretty cool story to dive into earlier this week. And I know that for me, I'd like to see a guy like that come back. And I think Patrick Kane had 5 points last night or something like that. So to see those guys from my generation still play is really cool. So I'd like to see him go out on his note, not opposed to his health issues. And then worst in sports, how about Tiger Woods and his Achilles, man? That's just brutal. 49, ruptured Achilles. I guess he can just kind of relax and watch his virtual golf league, right?
I guess. I mean, look, I think if you've watched him, the days of him like competing for major championships and stuff are very likely over. I was looking forward to watching him in the Masters coming up, but that guy gets hurt. That guy's body is failing him. So we'll see. He's going to rehab, he says, and try to come back. So we'll see what that looks like on the Tiger front. Joe, both my best and my worst could be taken any way. You could be taken for best or worst. And I look forward to these when the opportunity presents itself. My best thing is the New York Giants and how inept they are, because I find it to be hilarious. I go back to the Hard Knock stuff last year where the owner is sitting there is like, man, I'm just going to have a tough time sleeping tonight if Saquon ends up on the Eagles. And then, of course, Saquon ended up on the Eagles and won a Super Bowl. And now they're desperate, apparently, as all get out to end up with one of these quarterbacks. And if they get shut out by Rodgers, they will have tried for Stafford, missed on that. Tried for Rodgers, missed on that. They might get stuck with Russell Wilson, maybe, if he wants to go there, although he's meeting with Cleveland, apparently. They may not be able to get Cam Ward because the Titans might draft him, and they may just be stuck in absolute no man's land at the quarterback spot. And I, for one, find it hilarious. So it's my best thing in sports. My worst thing, which Josh on the text line has as his best thing, the Predators keep winning. Predators have won a lot of games. They've won 4 in a row. They got Anaheim coming up tomorrow night, and they're playing some pretty good hockey right now. So at a time of the year, Joe, where we talked about, hey, man, it's been this bad, might as well get a top pick out of it. They're winning some games and putting together a streak and playing good hockey, which I know for the players in the room, they feel good about, and that's what they want to do. From an organizational standpoint and me looking at the draft, I don't love it if I'm a Predators fan.
I mean, they can't even lose when they need to lose. Everything they need to do this year, they do the opposite of. Why?
I don't know. But like all of a sudden, Stamkos, I think Stamkos got like 9 points in the last 4 games, and he's just feeding the net right now. And it's like, okay, cool. Like Stamkos is just going to go on an absolute tear, which on one hand, Joe, I mean, you look at that and you're like, okay, well, cool. Like, does that mean he could get some confidence heading into next year and he looks more like Steven Stamkos? But, you know, you're not making the playoffs at this point. So I'm all on team draft right now.
Yeah, I mean, individually, you definitely you do want these people you're going to have to lean on next year to have a good feeling going into next year. So that would be good. And I know we're going to get into this later, but I mean, something like this probably helps Andrew Brunette, right? So
you would think.
I guess if you're a Preds fan, there's probably different feelings on that too. But ultimately, you got to get one of those picks. You got to get one of those guys.
And it's a lottery system, so they still might.
Sure,
there's still a lot of hockey left over this next month to sort out here. So who knows? They could end up back in 30th or 31st, but they could also end up in like 26th. So we'll see what that looks like for the Predators. Jared Stillman will be with us coming up next. We'll get into the Titans and the moves that they've made to this point in free agency with him. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you, and we are joined by our friend Jared Stillman, normally on Fridays at 7 o'clock, making an audible this week. Stilly, good morning. How are you?
I'm fabulous, and I'm so glad to be here on this wonderful program today. And so glad to be able to get in here since Joe, I absolutely know there'd be no chance of Joe doing my show this week for Jared versus Joe, since he'll be preoccupied with the SEC basketball tournament,
That's
the
right.
Joseph Robinette Rexrode weekly porn. That I'm just very, very happy.
Well, I'm happy that you're happy to be with us this morning. So the Titans have revamped their offensive line. Dan Moore on the left side, Latham on the right side, Kevin Zeitler in at right guard. What do you make of the moves that have been made, and how much better do you think this offensive line is?
So I have not listened to the first hour of this program. I just didn't. You know, I'm addicted to this show, so don't take it as a slight. But have you noticed what all of these free agent signings have in common? Whether it's Xavier Woods, Kevin Zeitler, Dan Moore, Van Jefferson,
They're all available.
They all have to come. Kevin Zeitler is the only one that missed a game last year. He played 16 games. Everybody else has played 17 games. And so, I mean, I don't know if Brinker's AI cancer curing model said, hey, play the guy or sign the guys who play in all the games. And Rand Carthon just ignored it. But I thought yesterday's Kenneth Murray move was a perfect example of what the Titans are getting away from, which is an inconsistent player that, you know, again, Murray played a lot of games, but he ended up missing 3 games last year. They replaced him with Cody Barton, a guy who played 17 games. I mean, every single one of these guys play 17 games. And because outside of Dan Moore, they haven't really broken the bank for anybody. Everybody's, you know, certainly under the $20 million range outside of Dan Moore. Because they haven't done that, they're going to be able to add about 5 or 6 more guys that are exactly like this. And then I do think that when free agency, the prices are going to go down significantly, probably starting tomorrow. You're going to see guys that thought they were going to be $10 million guys are going to take $4 million because they're afraid that the money might not be out there. I think there's going to probably be another handful of signings of veteran players that probably play. Now, once the money goes down, maybe the standard for how much they have to play goes down, but they'll probably play, you know, 15, 16, 17 games. And I'm totally fine with bringing in average NFL starters that play all the games. So far, I like it. You bring up the offensive line. I heard PK yesterday say that he thinks that he doesn't think it should take any time to gel. I don't think that's how that works, but I do think that after the first month of the year, the Titans should be adequate on the offensive line, which is certainly much, much, much better than it's been the last couple of years when they've been winging it with 270-pound centers and Andre Dillard and right tackles playing left tackle.
So you're in your fanboy phase with this front office. Do you?
In all seriousness, how is that a fanboy phase? Do you dispute anything that I just said?
No, but you're well. The thing that I would question, and again, I'm not going to sit here and claim to know. I mean, none of us know, but I'm skeptical of Dan Moore. I mean, I understand that he got better last year. And we would all agree, like if we're comparing him to Nicholas Petit-Frere or Dillard, okay, fine. Yes, it's an upgrade. But if I would argue that if he doesn't take a pretty significant step, even from last year's improvement, then it's still a problematic spot for a team that also has a real question at center. I mean, are they better? Yes, I think they're better. If they could get to middle of the pack, I think I don't think you can ask too much more, but I'm not sure they can still with this group. I mean, you just seem a little optimistic for me.
Well, again, Zeitler is a very solid player, and I think he brings veteran leadership to the offensive line group because they have so many young guys. You know, Skoronski's young, Latham's young, Moore is young-ish. So I really like the Zeitler signing. I think what Dan Moore is Lloyd Cushenberry at left tackle. The last year, the Titans felt, because Bill Callahan was basically calling the shots on the offensive line, even though he wasn't GM, Bill Callahan likes the big fat guys on the interior. That's why Daniel Brunskill couldn't play for him, even though Daniel Brunskill was as good as some of these other guys. And it's because Bill wants the big old fatties, the big beef. So Tyler Biotish was a little undersized, and he ended up going to the Commanders, even though I think he's probably a better player than Cushenberry. The Titans viewed this as a one center free agent class, and they spent the money on Cushenberry. Cushenberry is, what would you guys say, an average NFL center? Has his screw ups, but
I think it's fair.
You can win with Lloyd Cushenberry at center. I mean, that's how I view Dan Moore. Dan Moore is a starting left tackle in the NFL who plays 17 games a season, plays over 1,000 snaps at left tackle every year. So you know he will be available. He has been a
you don't know, but you like your chances better.
He has been a starting left tackle for a team that has made the playoffs in 3 of the last 4 years. That means that he is a starting left tackle on a playoff team. Regardless of if we want to dispute the fact that Pittsburgh kind of stinks when they get into the playoff, whatever. The reason they had to overpay Dan Moore is because they blew it last year with both Jermaine Illuminor in free agency and J.C. Latham in the draft. And I kept saying during free agency, I'm like, they've got to go sign Jermaine Illuminor. They obviously know the right tackle, so they have to get a right tackle. You got to go sign Jermaine Illuminor, who I think is making $7.5 million with the Giants. And everybody kept saying, oh, Jermaine Illuminor, he sucks. He's only got a 65, 70 rating from Pro Football Focus. He sucks. We can do better. And I'm like, he's a starting right tackle. And you don't have that. So with Dan Moore, he's a starting left tackle. And I thought that the one thing I really didn't like, because I don't think it's a very fair assessment. And I mean, again, I think you guys know that if the Titans make moves I don't like, I'm not afraid to call it out this way. But in the write-up that everybody picked up on, because nobody here knows anything about Dan Moore, but in the write-up that The Athletic did, they talked about how he's allowed the most sacks in the last 4 years and the most pressures in the last 4 years of any player in the league. And the reason I think that's unfair is the reason that guys who are significantly worse, who have started at tackle for the Titans over the last couple of years, don't allow as many sacks is because all of those guys get benched.
Okay, Jared, fine. That's fine. He's played more than the absolute worst of the worst. So if you want to, insert, okay, but actually here's some guys who are worse because they really suck and they don't play as much. Jared, those numbers are not good.
Do you know how many sacks Andre Dillard and Jalen Duncan combined to give up in 2023?
I don't know. It seemed like 1,000.
7 sacks. They gave up 21 sacks.
Right. But again, if this is what we're comparing him to, then it's like this is not comforting.
This is why you're paying $50 million, is so you don't give up 21 sacks at left tackle. That's why you're paying, because you blew it last year.
Get excited, Titans fans.
You blew it last year when there was a $7 million right tackle who allows 5 sacks a season, was out in free agency. And Joe, I believe it was people like you who thought Nicholas Robby, a.k.a.
PT.
You said, I think PT can play right tackle. Bill Callahan, he'll coach him. I trust it. You and Titan fans believe that bullcrap, and that's why you have to pay $50 million today. I remember last year, Joe, you argued with me that J.C. Latham, I'm like, he's built like a right tackle. And you're like, there's no difference between being built like a right tackle and a left tackle. Ho, ho, ho. Even though we took the top 5. Yes, there is. We took the top 5 highest paid right tackles, and they averaged 330 pounds.
Oh my God!
We took the top.
You're bringing this back like you've been
tackles,
validated. Oh God. Okay.
And there were 312 pounds on average. That is a difference of 17 pounds.
I also heard
Latham is 346 pounds.
He's
a right tackle.
Okay.
And clearly, I'm right about this too. So because people like you, Joe, were so arrogant that Bill Callahan and J.C. Latham,
and so now he's going to turn Dan Moore into an alt. But now Bill Callahan's got what he needs, according to you. Now everything's great.
Dan Moore
is
Jr.
Bill Callahan good
years.
or bad? You feel good about this offensive line?
Because they got good players.
Okay. Well, apparently Bill Callahan sucks, according to you. So what?
Dan Moore.
Bill Callahan thought that J.C. Latham was a left tackle.
Bill Callahan is not Jesus. He cannot turn water into wine. And when you put PT out there,
apparently
which
he doesn't
you thought
even know
he
as
could
much
do,
about the offensive line as you do either.
well,
I
he's
mean,
not a personnel guy. Like I think the Titans learned this the hard way. And by the way, I'd like an apology on this program too,
oh
Robbie.
yeah.
Because
What about Jared?
After the Mike Borgonzi press conference, I started 2:00 and I said, the way they did things last year, which was, coach, you tell us who you want, we'll go get him. I said, those days are over. And PK and you were like, PK was like, hey, I had no way of knowing that. Hey, I'm making it up. I'm getting my hair cut, and I got somebody, which I didn't even know he got a haircut. He's like, I'm getting a haircut, and this guy told me, and still he said that Brian Callahan not picking the players. Now, Paul's like, I think it's going to be more personnel driven.
Okay, first of all, if you have a beef with Paul, I don't know what you have a beef with Paul. They're taking up with Paul.
It was on this program, and
so
you co-signed.
Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, no, hold on.
They're kicking the coaches out.
Was Dan Moore chosen independently of Bill Callahan and Brian Callahan?
I believe he probably was.
Okay, all right. There's no apology coming, jackass. No.
And here's the other thing. Watch your language, Joe, Mr. Sensitivity Training.
I don't sit here and talk about male genitals all the time when I'm talking about the draft.
But I mean,
yeah. Maybe work on that.
It's worse to say than chubby on the air. That said, I do go back to the Dan Moore thing. Dan Moore over the last 4 years has averaged, and this includes the 12 sacks he allowed last year that a lot of people think are on Russell Wilson. But Dan Moore allowed 8.5 sacks per season. Again, that's not great, but it's a lot better than 21, the amount of left tackles, or the amount of sacks
we can all agree that he's better than like Dillard and Jalen Duncan.
The amount of sacks you allowed at right tackle last year. So that is a dramatic improvement. And because there was one guy on the market that checked all the boxes, you had to overpay, and you did. And I don't have a problem with overpaying for the one guy. That's what free agency is. You're not going to go get Joe Burrow in free agency. You're going to go get an adequate starter that you can win with, and that's who the Titans got.
Jared, last thing for you. Who is QB1 and QB2 for this team when training camp rolls around?
Well, the first thing is easy. It's going to be Cam Ward. And, I mean, that's without a doubt. I mean, even the QB2s, I have no idea. Like, people have been talking about Zach Wilson and Mac Jones. I mean, the Titans had zero interest in Mac Jones. Like, as much as it was being reported by PK and Buck saying, we're hearing Mac Jones and Mac Jones, I am telling you, as a fact, the Titans were not interested in Mac Jones. So I don't know what I actually think, and I hate saying this, I think it's probably going to be Mason Rudolph. And I go back to the fact that Jim Wyatt wrote a story at Titans.com about how the Titans would love to have Mason Rudolph back if they can make it work, with quotes from Callahan at the combine. And I don't believe that those Mason Rudolph quotes ended up, I mean, I don't think those were in any of the press conferences, even the little like local side press conference. I don't think because nobody else had those quotes. So I'm thinking that the Titans were sitting there thinking, hey, we are probably going to bring back Mason Rudolph, but let's let Mason know about it. And so let's try to get in some good graces. So, Jimmy, can you write us an article about it? Because why else would Jim Wyatt have written that article? I think Jim Wyatt was sitting there in Indianapolis going, I wonder if they're going to keep Mason Rudolph as the backup quarterback. It's going to be a veteran. It's not going – I think it should be Brandon Allen from the 49ers, who played with, Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, so he's got the Callahan connection. I think Rudolph is terrible. I do not think it's going to be Levis. I don't think he'll be on the team next year, but I think it's going to be Cam Ward. And right now, if I had to bet, I'd say Rudolph, but I hope it's somebody better. But an old veteran quarterback, like a true backup, I think is going to be the guy that sits behind Cam Ward.
Jared, great stuff. Good to hear from you this morning, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, and I appreciate, Robby, the sentiment of the apologies for your co-host Joe that he's not giving, and your semi-co-host
Speak English
Paul.
or leave. Speak English or leave.
I appreciate the fact that Robby understands that I'm right,
sure.
And that thank you, and that even though you won't apologize, I know in his heart he believes I deserve one.
There you go. Thank you, Jared.
See you guys.
We'll react to what Stilly had to say there on the Titans front. Take your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 the game. Join 1025 1063 the game for an SEC watch party as we broadcast live from 9 a.m., 6 p.m. at the pub in the Gulch tomorrow. For more details, visit thegamenashville.com/events. On-site coverage of the SEC tournament presented by Toyota. Let's fuel your adrenaline at Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places. Also brought to you by Guinness, thenewcumberland.com, Volunteer Hose and Gasket, and Sloan's Motorcycle and ATV. Robby and Rexrode here on 1025 1063 the game. Stilly, big fan apparently, Joe, of this revamped offensive line there. He is convinced that Cam Ward is quarterback number one, will not entertain any other option, albeit the options quickly evaporating out there on the quarterback front. The Rudolph thing is interesting. What do you think the reaction from Titans fans is going to be if Rudolph is brought back as QB2?
Yeah, I mean, it's not exciting, but I still contend that Rudolph, and this is why I disagree with Paul on this. I mean, he lost it on the Rudolph turning it over, and he did have some bad turnovers. I still think Rudolph is an okay backup.
Top 10?
So what's that?
Top 10?
Top 12.
Top 5?
I'll make him top 12.
Okay.
Yeah. I wish we had more time with Stilly. I wondered, did he ever get down to the bottom of the Titans line to PK about Darnold? Because I mean, I really, oh no, sorry, no, that's right, that didn't happen.
Should have brought that
of
up.
all people who I love people who keep score as selectively as he does. It's really tremendous. Like the most wrong person in all of Nashville media consistently. But boy, are the wins celebrated.
Hey, he's convinced that the Titans are never in on Mac Jones either. So Mac Jones, Zach Wilson,
I could
get out of here.
I hope that's yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like, has it all along been basically, none of these guys, actually, no thanks on any of them. Mason, come back, be fine. Or hey, Levis, there's something there. Worked out poorly last year. Draft a rookie, and then Levis probably becomes the backup, and then at some point maybe he gets an opportunity somewhere else. I don't know. I mean, I'm generally with you that like it's hard to buy that, and I think that Levis's performance on its own was rough enough, even if you take all the other stuff out of it, that you wouldn't do that. But I mean, look, I don't know. Is Minshew signed anywhere yet?
I don't think so.
Okay. You can keep some hope alive there with him if you want.
Yeah, you talk about somebody that's kind of all over the map. And look, I love Gardner Minshew. I mean, again, I'm all about entertainment here. So a Minshew or Winston, I would be all in favor of. The Brandon Allen idea I actually don't hate. Like, he's pretty good backup quarterback. And as Jared pointed out, there is a Callahan connection there. I think Rudolph, how much better will Rudolph be with a competent offensive line? I don't know. The offensive line was horrible last year. We talk about how much that affects Levis. That affected Rudolph as well. He did have a couple of plays last year where it's just like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you're a veteran backup quarterback. You can't turn the ball over like that. So I don't know. We'll see what Rudolph looks like. Apparently there's some interest in Pittsburgh bringing him back as well. So we'll see. Number one, who ends up being Pittsburgh's starting quarterback. Is Rodgers ever going to make a decision? Apparently he's wandering around on the beach with headphones in. So is the decision coming like today for Rodgers?
Well, it certainly sounds like he thinks the Steelers are lowballing him, right? That's how I'm reading it. I mean, I know Florio wrote something about this. Apparently the number, there's a gap on the number. So what if what if it turns out it's like, man, I'm just not playing for that. And then I know it's funny to even mention this, but I'm just going to throw it out there since we don't know. And since, Big Joe really wants this to happen, the Titans are like, you know what? It is worth throwing a big number at him for a year. What about that, Nashville?
Hey, I'm for it. All for entertainment around here. Get Aaron Rodgers in, let Cam Ward sit behind him. There's your QB1 and QB2.
It'd give you the chance to, to not have to throw the rookie right out there. I understand this offensive line. It looks better. It looks improved. I'm not ready to say it looks good. I'm not ready to say, that this is these are good conditions right now for a rookie quarterback. I would not say that.
I'm sure Rodgers would be thrilled to come here and throw to Calvin Ridley and Van Jefferson. I'm sure that would be really something that fires him up.
And Jake, come on.
615-737-1025, our phone number. We have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode at 7:45. Charles Robinson will be with us at 8 o'clock. Some interesting comments from Barry Trotz earlier this week on the future of Andrew Brunette. We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 93.3 FM Totally Hits tonight for MTSU men's basketball. Blue Raiders taking on Louisiana Tech in the Conference USA tournament. Tip off at 8 o'clock. Pregame beginning at 7:30. Coverage also available on the 93.3 FM Totally Nashville app and at totallyhitsnashville.com. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Joe, it's been a busy week on the NFL free agency front. One thing that we've not gotten to is a couple of comments from Barry Trotz on the future of Andrew Burnett. So I want to start with last Friday. So last Friday, in the immediate aftermath of the trade deadline, Trotz held a press conference, and I asked him about basically evaluating the way they need to play, their style of play, some changes that they could make there. Trotz, gave a couple examples of changes that they've made and things that they could look to do moving forward. And Joe, in the middle of that answer, he started talking about Andrew Burnett, and I'll just quickly read a quote that he had last Friday. Quote, "Bruno did a lot of adjusting this year, which I give him a lot of credit for. I handed him a tough hand at times in terms of players moving up and down, the number of players, all those things. I really gave him a tough hand, but he's growing as a coach all the time. I think he's a hell of a coach. I think he's a hell of a person. He's done everything in the hockey business. I guarantee you he'll take the summer, he'll come back, and he's more prepared for everything. That's what experience is. It just gives you a more understanding of what's important, what's not." So I thought that quote was pretty interesting, Joe. I put it out there. Preds fans, Preds Twitter went nuts in terms of the reaction of the quote, "I guarantee you he'll take the summer, he'll come back, and he's more prepared for everything" part of this. And people took that as, well, Andrew Burnett is coming back as head coach next year. Knowing Barry Trotz the way I do, I didn't take that as gospel that Andrew Burnett is coming back as coach next year. Sometimes Barry Trotz just talks and he goes and he goes and he's making another point. And I felt like that was an interesting quote. So Stillman asked him about that earlier this week when Trotz was on with his show, and asked him about those comments on Andrew Burnett and what that means in terms of Burnett's future. And here's what Barry Trotz had to say.
No, I think everything's for evaluation. I think it's too premature to make that decision one way or the other, and I think it's unfair right now for me to answer that because I do know this, that you have to go through all those experiences. That's the one thing that I do believe is you go through all these experiences, you become a better coach. If it was a situational player, you'd be a better player, and you're prepared for whatever comes at you. Whatever situation you're in going forward. So, no, I didn't want to tip my hand one way or the other, and I'm not going to. And I think it's unfair, not only to me, because and Andrew and our fans and the players. Our focus should be playing as well as we can, and evaluate the rest of the season and make a decision at the end of the season. So, I think that's a little bit premature on whoever just throwing that out there, and if you took it that way, I that's on me. But that's not my intent in terms of that statement.
So, Joe, when you hear that from Barry Trotz, you hear the quote that I read. How do you sift through all that? What's your reaction to it?
Well, first of all, I mean, unfair to the fans. We all need to, the fans don't need to focus on the next game. The fans are going to talk about things like this. So, I mean, let's separate. You can say it's unfair to you. You can say it's unfair to Andrew. That's fine. You can't expect fans to, just focus on the next game, fans. It's a huge game that we should be losing, but we keep winning. I can't hear all of this. And I understand, Barry Trotz doesn't want to be pinned into a corner here and be locked in. But it's hard for me to take in all that information and not think much more strongly that Andrew Burnett's coming back next year. What about you?
Yeah, I've thought for a few weeks that when a season goes as poorly as this one has, that somebody ultimately is going to have to pay the price. And it's not going to be the veteran players that are locked in on long-term deals. It's probably going to be the coach. That's what I've thought. I will say, hearing him speak about this the last week or so has changed my feeling a little bit. I think there's going to be serious consideration given towards bringing Andrew Burnett back next year to start as head coach. And I don't know that that's 100%. I don't know that it was ever 100% the other way and that he was going to be forced to do something and fire him. But like I hear those comments and he's talking about going through things like this and being a better coach. The one thing I will say, if you're trying to draw conclusions on what this all means, like Barry Trotz kind of sounded like when he took over the job that he wasn't too keen on firing John Hines, and then he fired John Hines. It took a while,
right?
But he did it.
Yep.
So I guess my answer would be, I don't know how much attention I would pay to like what's actually being said around it right now. There's not much he's going to throw out there that he's going to be willing to paint himself into the corner on March the 12th, March the 13th. Does the rest of this season matter in terms of the way they play down the stretch? Yeah, I think to him it probably does. Right now they're playing well. So what does that mean for Andrew Brunette? I know if you're a Predators fan and you're worried about the draft, you're looking at it and saying, my goodness, stop playing well so you could get a top pick. Andrew Brunette certainly doesn't care about that. He's trying to keep his job. So we'll see what the team looks like coming down the stretch. I just, the way that he talked about him on Friday kind of made it sound like he's coming back. And then he was asked about it Tuesday and certainly did not want to go down that route there. So I understand, Joe, if your plan in the back of your mind is that you're going to have to fire the coach at the end of the year, it serves you no purpose to come out and say that right now. I just don't really know what to make of what he's thrown out there over the past week here.
Yeah. Robert Nashville says if he doesn't say he's coming back, then he's not coming back. That's not true. He doesn't want to be pinned down. There's nothing he said to Jared when and after the fact Tuesday to me erased that quote previously. I mean that's like you when you're sitting there talking about a guy learning and coming back stronger, all that stuff. Like you don't say that if you're absolutely resolved that you're firing him. No way you say that. So I think anybody who thinks it's like over, he's just trying to be coy publicly, but he like that's just wrong. That's not the right way to read this. You're not going to, like, I get not wanting to be pinned down on on either thing. What he said with the initial quote, I don't see how you could possibly hear that and then be like, oh, he's definitely going to fire him. But like you said,
I mean, it was a pretty ringing endorsement of Andrew Brunette.
Yeah. Like you said, he ended up firing John Hines, and it seemed like, I don't know, it seems kind of like maybe this is a situation where it's okay. So what's the answer? What's better? Which direction are you going if you do fire him? If you feel like you have one, then, all right. I mean, we back 2 years ago, we were talking a lot about Spencer Carberry, right? A Trotz guy as one of the possibilities. And I'm not bringing him up because he could get him now. He couldn't, but I'm just saying, is there somebody else, that's in mind who with this group of players, Barry Trotz thinks would be more effective? If that's the case, then it's more likely he moves on, before the season. I ask you this, Robbie, if he doesn't move on from Brunette and they run it back next year, first of all, I mean, Brunette would be on every hot seat list in the league.
Yeah.
Right. There's just no question. He'd be on he'd be top of mind for people of coaches who could be fired early in the season. And also, does that more, I guess, is that another big knock against Trotz if that's how it turns out? Like, how much does that hurt Trotz as opposed to just making a change after the season?
Well, I think it's certainly going to hurt him with a fan base, because I do think that there's a lot of Predators fans that want to see a coaching change after this year. Now, everybody focused in on what he said in those comments about him coming back next year. Like, he's going to come back next year and he'll be great. One of the things that was interesting to me about the original quote was how much he talked about giving Andrew Brunette a tough hand. He was like, I handed him a tough hand in terms of players moving up and downs and the number of players and all those things. And he's talked about, like, the free agency decisions to this point have not worked out the way that they thought it would. So, I guess when Trotz is looking at this, how much does he think coaching is to blame for that? And how much of it does he think that he just brought in maybe the wrong guys? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah, look, Trotz is very publicly accountable, and he's not afraid to criticize himself, and I appreciate that. But like Jesse texted the same thing as you're saying that. Like, if you take the blame for the roster, doesn't that Jesse says you don't take blame for the roster and then fire the coach. He still might, but I think that's another important thing to keep in mind here. I mean, he's giving him an out, he's giving him grace, and he's talking about how he can be better next year. Well, that doesn't tell me he's certain he's firing him.
Well, and that's why I wanted to ask the original question anyway. Like, I think clearly throughout the year they've tried to change some things up in terms of the way that they want to play. Like, I think the biggest question you've got to ask yourself if you're Trotz is with the players that you have right now. And he's talked a lot about the future, and I understand that. And they got young guys coming up. I don't know how many of those young guys are going to be ready next year. So in the meantime, while you're waiting on those guys, like, how do you have to play to maximize this team, this roster? And is Andrew Burnett the right guy for that? Like, that's what the coaching decision to me boils down to. Like, my opinion on Burnett hasn't changed all that much. I think he's a good coach. They've all had a horrible year. I think they'd be the first one to tell you that. I think Burnett's a good coach. I think he's going to be a good coach in the league. But if you look at the roster in the offseason and you don't think Andrew Burnett is the guy to coach this team, then you got to make a move at that point. If you do, and you think that there are some adjustments that he can make, then okay, bring him back, and I'm with you. He's going to be on every hot seat list, and you better start off the season really well next year, or you're probably going to end up getting fired at that point. But like that to me is the question of, like, you have to identify the way for this roster to play as currently constructed to bring out the whatever the max level of success is for them. You got to find a way to bring that out. And look, Stamkos is 35. He's playing great right now. He's 35. Marchessault's in his mid-30s. Yossi's in his mid-30s. O'Reilly's in his mid-30s. Like, maybe they're just going down. I don't know. Like, that happens in sports. But whatever you identify as the way you have to play to maximize what these guys are, that's how you base your decision on what to do with the coach, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, and it's a big, and look, I think there's feedback. Again, it's not like, hey, Roman, should we fire him or no? It's not like that. But still, I mean, I think how these guys react to him and even exit interviews and stuff like that, it's important information.
I agree. 615-737-1025, our phone number. The Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next. Charles Robinson will be with us at 8 o'clock. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, the game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment. Let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
Send me that link. I'll read it during the commercial, and I'll tell people what you actually said.
I'll read the whole damn thing right now in your face. Here, read it. Come on.
He had no way of knowing that. He's making it up. I'm getting my hair cut.
Benjamin says, real ones don't wife. Don't be that guy, Benjamin. Don't be the total non-wife. The idea that, oh, wow, that guy smoked some pot. Oh, no.
It is that time of the day. Time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning on the program. Joseph, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm gonna pivot here because I think that we've complained about this, but I think this is worth a rant, and we can keep this discussion going because there's a lot of reaction to this discussion. There's a couple things I want to get to, but I think this has now become rant worthy, and maybe I'm actually gonna tag you in on this, Robby. But okay. Craig says, is Carl Taylor a legit option if we get a new coach? He seems to do well in Milwaukee. Has he earned the shot if the opportunity presents itself? I'm going to quickly say no. I don't think Carl Taylor is going to be the next coach of the Nashville Predators, and I don't think that we should keep talking about that.
Now, look, the easy thing to do is to point at the American League coach and say, yeah, just bring him up. Does Carl Taylor deserve a shot to be an NHL head coach? Probably, yeah. Like, I think he's done a good job in Milwaukee. As I continue to try to remind people, like, there's a huge difference between coaching in the AHL and coaching in the NHL, and it's not always the same thing. Now, look, Dean Evison did a great job in Milwaukee for a long time, and I think Dean Evison is a really good coach in the National Hockey League. I think Carl Taylor can be a good coach in the National Hockey League. I think if you're going to make a coaching change this offseason, this is the way I view it. I don't think a first-time head coach with this roster is the way to go. I just don't. I think if you're going to make a coaching change, I think you need to bring in somebody who is experienced, who has the skins on the wall, can connect with your veteran players, and can also at the same time help develop your younger guys. Can Carl Taylor do that? Maybe. I don't know. But I would rather, when you have a core right now built around Stamkos and Marchessault and Yossi and Forsberg and Saros and all these guys, I think you need to hire a veteran coach. So, look, they've had the opportunity to hire Carl Taylor. Like, Barry Trotz could have hired Carl Taylor a couple years ago, and he didn't. Now, that doesn't mean he never would, but I think if Carl Taylor's opportunity to be an NHL head coach is going to come along at some point, it's probably not going to be here. That's the way I view it.
I was wrong. I thought you'd get mad. But see, you're just much more level-headed than me. Couple quick ones to get to. Conspiracy theory. Texter says Trotz keeping Bruno to ensure the team plays poorly to the end of the season. They get a better draft pick. Well,
it ain't working if he's doing that.
Yeah, it's not working very well. This is not working. Maybe you need to fire him right now. If he wins another game, you're fired. How about that?
Look, I legitimately believe Barry Trotz when he talks about like not wanting to tank. I think he's got a lot of coaching blood in him. Look, do I think he looks at the top 5 of the draft and wants to land in one of those spots? Sure he does. He's been trying to get in the top 5 of the draft for a couple years via trade, and it's just really difficult to do that. The problem is, like, when you're got a system like this, like, you could lose, you could end up in the 30th spot and end up third worst team in the league and still not have a top 5 pick because of the lottery, right? Like, it's just, you're not guaranteed to get it. So tanking can work in the NHL. I'm convinced that when McDavid and Eichel were available, we saw some teams tank. Like, we saw Buffalo tank. We saw Edmonton tank. Now, it didn't work for Buffalo. Like, Buffalo ended up drafting Eichel second overall and not McDavid. Everybody in that draft wanted McDavid. Eichel, pretty darn good player. Didn't work out in Buffalo. Has worked out pretty nicely in Vegas. So it's just an inexact science. I believe Barry Trotz when he says he doesn't believe in tanking and all that stuff. I think if you're a fan and you hear that, you're like, well, that's great, but, like, what's the path that makes you the most successful ultimately at the end? Like, here's the way I view it. It's been a horrible year. It's been an incredible disappointment. And now that you've gotten to this point of it, Joe, I'm looking at what's the payoff for it. Well, the payoff could end up being, could you finally get a franchise-changing centerman that you have been looking for since the moment you became an NHL team? That's the payoff that I'm
Seems
looking for.
important.
And I look, maybe they get it, maybe they don't, but I think that's worthwhile coming down the stretch here.
100%. But of course, it's no different than when we talk about the NFL. I mean, you guys are competitors. You can't expect players to go out here, especially in these two sports. The contact. I mean, like, you can't expect them to do anything but try to win.
Yeah.
The coach to do anything but try to win. I mean, the way that you tank or fank is that this veteran's banged up. Yeah, you can take another week.
Right.
Let's bring up a young guy. That's the only, like, lineup engineered tanking is really the only way. Dennis says Stamkos player coach. How about that?
I mean, I think Stamkos has got a brilliant hockey mind. I don't think that he wants to do the player coaching part of it. Although, back in the old day, player coach was the way to go. It was good stuff.
Absolutely. No face mask.
Will we ever see that again? The player coach?
No helmets.
Probably not. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports will be with us coming up next. We got a whole lot to get into on the free agency front. We'll do that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. And we head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in our friend Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. Charles, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, gents. How you doing this morning?
Doing awesome. Appreciate you taking time to be with us.
Super.
So, Charles, the Sam Darnold pursuit is over. He ends up in Seattle. You've got whatever's going on with Aaron Rodgers. We'll get to that with you here in just a few minutes. Not any activity on the quarterback front from the Titans to this point. So,
yeah,
do you view, I guess, number one, how do you view that? Do you think the Titans are zeroing in on Cam Ward as their guy? And if not, what do you make of where the Titans go at the quarterback position?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I started the process. I would have told you, I thought based on conversations I had coming out of the combine that potentially they were leaning away from Cam Ward, but they signed Dan Moore, and it just, I think that's shifted. Honestly, I really do. I think it's shifted for Cam Ward's camp. I think it's shifted for when you look at just how the Titans have prepared. Conversations that I had after the Moore signing, which were just, look, they're not going out and adding a tackle at that financial price point to protect an old guy next year. They're not doing it to protect Will Levis next year. What's sort of materialized for me over the last few days is just that, the Levis experience is really over there. There's no veteran out there that they're fishing around with right now. And that, if anything, when you talk to, Cam Ward's corner of the planet, it's just, okay, I'm going to end up in Tennessee right now, or they're going to deal me, they're going to deal the top overall pick to the Giants, and I'm going to be a Giant. I think that's really how Cam Ward's camp's approaching this right now. That's the two teams that he's really looking at. And of those two teams, the setup sure as heck looks like it's the Titans that are preparing to take him at that number one overall pick. So I think, especially when you look at the Giants, there's a little bit of desperation right now because they're waiting to find out what is Aaron Rodgers going to do. Russell Wilson is their backup option in New York right now. And then, I think the options that they're looking at draft wise, the way they're really preparing, seems like they're going to be at that number 3 overall pick. So that to me has definitely been a shift. Like I said, I think really when things kicked off, I was not putting Cam Ward in Tennessee. And now I think that's changed quite a bit. And the focus has shifted over to the few remaining franchises that are looking for a bridge starter right now. And those are all, Pittsburgh, New York, and the Cleveland Browns. Those are the 3 teams that feel the most desperate to sign a veteran right now.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but I guess I would ask on the Moore signing, don't you need to fix your offensive line regardless?
Yeah.
Like you got to fix your offensive line. Also, let me ask you this as a follow-up. How big of a fix is Dan Moore? I mean, if you ask some Steelers fans, they might tell you it's not that big of a fix. I don't know internally. I know the Steelers have drafted tackles the last 2 drafts, so that's been sort of the plan. He wasn't supposed to be the plan last year, but what's your feeling on him? What's the feeling around the league on him? And also just the idea of, I guess the Titans had to fix their offensive line, period,
true.
Right?
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, I don't think, let me put it this way. I think Moore is, and I want to be real careful here because I don't want to make it look like it's a bad signing. I don't think it's a bad signing, but it's definitely a signing where when you look at Moore's age, he's almost, I think he's near 26 and a half right now. It's not like it's it's a young-ish offensive tackle. I mean, he's really in the middle of his prime. He's a solid player. I don't think, as you said, if you talk to Steelers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's not. A lot of people probably say, look, he's not an absolute anchor franchise tackle that's going to fix all your problems. But I think for the money that they signed him for, it was let me put it to you this way. It was a very motivated signing. And I think it raised some eyebrows when people are like, wow, okay, yeah, they have to fix their line. But they really pushed it with this particular tackle that they added. And so for me, what I end up doing is I start making calls saying like, okay, like contextualize this signing for me. And the way it was put to me was, like I said, they're not going out and they're not signing him at this stage with this level of motivation to go protect, some middling, bridge starter right now. They're not going out and they're not doing this to protect Will Levis right now. They're going out and they're doing this because they're going to make the kind of move from the quarterback standpoint that they feel like could potentially transform the franchise moving forward. And the only player, honestly, that's available right now who you could really look at and say that's the guy, given that they didn't get involved with anyone else. Remember, too, we have that piece of information in our pocket, is Cam Ward. I'd feel differently if I were talking to other teams and they're saying, man, we're worried about the Titans right now. Worried about the Titans taking this guy away from us right now. Or if I were talking to, agents saying, I'm using the Titans as leverage, or every indication I get really is that the Titans have been sidelined in a way that it only makes sense to other franchises that the resolution that is spelled out in their actions is that they're going to end up sitting at number one and ultimately taking Cam Ward. And by the way, also, I think from my own personal knowledge, feeling like from what I've gathered, Levis, they don't want to do Levis as a starter in 2025. They really do not want to go down that avenue again. They've been there. They know how it ends up. And I'm talking about the coaching staff. I'm talking about the incoming front office. I think there is a feel there that they know that's not something that realistically they're going to be able to do in 2025 and have the kind of success that can turn a franchise around. And by the way, I will also say, I know there are some people inside the organization, and I'm not saying Cam Ward is Jaden Daniels, but it's not lost on them what Daniels was able to do to really turn around the culture of the franchise, not just the wins and losses, but also, inside the locker room, people wanting to gravitate to the Washington Commanders. If we had said that a year ago, it would have been the most ridiculous thing we've ever heard, that the Commanders would be a franchise that was turned around, that players wanted to go play for, that they could be a playoff team. That's not happening, honestly. I feel like there's nobody inside the organization that's like, that'll happen with Will Levis. Nobody feels that way right now. So you kind of have to put all the pieces together and understand what they have pursued and what they haven't, which is just as big a piece of information, and it points toward Cam Ward.
So is Rodgers to the Steelers going to happen in your mind? There's some chatter out there about how he could end up in Minnesota on a one-year deal. How do you view the Rodgers part of this?
Yeah, look, it's really interesting because clearly he's holding up everything right now. Everybody's waiting on him. It's sort of like when we began free agency, and it was, Darnold was the domino that had to fall that slid a number of players into their positions. But, the Steelers, they have outs that they don't in Russell Wilson, because there are people inside the Steelers organization that do not want to go back to Russell Wilson flat out. And I'm talking about like coaching staff members that walked away from 2024 saying, we can't do that again. Like, we know what that is. It's not going to change. If he's our starter again in 2025, we can expect the same results ultimately down the stretch that we had in 2024. It's going to be the same roller coaster again. And, even with bringing DK Metcalf aboard, which, can be transformational in some respects, but we'll see if George Pickens is still there by the time the draft rolls around. Those are two really interesting wide receiver kind of mindsets to have in your locker room together. And I just don't think that Russell Wilson is viewed as the answer inside Pittsburgh. So they're really looking at Aaron Rodgers saying, like, we got to have this guy. Absolutely. And the Giants, at the very least, not having gone through the Russell Wilson experience, wanting Aaron Rodgers, feel like they have two options. I think Pittsburgh is in a situation where they got one option, and then they have in Russell the backup. It's an option, but it's also one where everyone says it's not going to change. Really, what we experienced in 2024 is going to be replicated. And, that's a problem. At some point, ownership's going to go, this is enough. Like we can't keep running into the same, Mike Tomlin doesn't have a losing season, but are we really spinning our wheels here? At some point, there has to be change just for the sake of change, kind of like the Philadelphia Eagles looked at Andy Reid when they kept just sort of ending up in the same place over and over again. So Rodgers is on the beach in Australia doing his thing. I feel like every offseason we're kind of waiting for this guy to do something or make some decision or there to be some declaration. We're back there again. But I can tell you absolutely Cleveland, New York, and Pittsburgh are all sitting there right now going, how is this going to slot out? And there's only 2 quarterback chairs right now because now it looks like the Atlanta Falcons are really serious about not letting Kirk Cousins go this Sunday. They're gonna go through that roster bonus trigger for 2026 salary. They're going to go ahead and add another $10 million in guaranteed salary in 2026, and they're going to hang on to him because they know they have a player right now that could have some value and they could trade.
So I want to go back to Cam Ward, Charles, with the Titans, because as you said, I mean, you can look at this situation. It's hard to. I mean, it looks like strongly like they're going to potentially take him with that top pick. Do you feel, I guess, their pivot on him? How much of it would you attribute to like just getting to know him, liking him more, the visit, things like that? How much, if any, would you attribute it to the trade market just isn't as appealing as maybe you would have thought as a team holding the number 1 pick?
Okay, so I think it's 3 factors. Number 1, I think it's the assessment on Cam, and I can't speak to it being universal inside the franchise. I don't know that everybody's fully on board, and that is one thing that, and I always tend to take this with a grain of salt. When I come out of the combine, I try to get a feel for how teams that I think are going to take a player. I try to get a feel for how teams are sort of viewing players, but it can be tricky because sometimes you can come out of the combine and you will hear, hey, they're not completely sold on this player. I felt, and I kind of felt like that with Cam and Shedeur when it came to the Tennessee Titans. I was like, man, this just feels, the assessment I'm getting from other teams that interact with the Titans, just different pieces of information. I felt like, man, the Titans aren't sold on these guys. I just don't see them taking Cam at 1. This feels like a trade situation. And then even from Cam's camp, it felt like coming out of the combine, it felt to me like they really thought, hey, the Giants are moving up to 1 and Cam's going to be the number 1 overall pick, but it's going to end up being with the New York Giants. So I was very sold at the start of free agency. The Titans aren't, I kind of had conviction the Titans aren't taking this guy. And even when I think I tweeted out like, hey, just once Darnold had signed with the Seahawks, I kind of thumbnailed here's where I think the quarterbacks are going. And I did not have Cam with the Titans. But after a few days, again, of processing the Dan Moore signing, talking to some different people, I thought, all right, there's a lot of noise here. Like maybe there are, individuals have a certain assessment of Cam, but they're not making a decision inside the Titans, which is not unusual. You will have, anytime there's assessments of players, that you're drafting, if you go across an organization and you start saying, okay, well, what did the OC say? What did the head coach say? What did the general manager say? What did the head of, player personnel? You will sometimes get deviation in opinions, or, someone thinks that maybe it's the year to wait. Others think that, no, this is the year we have to do it. So it'll get real muddy really fast. And that's why I think, to me, it's very difficult to pin down what a team is going to do with a draft pick, even when they have the number 1 overall selection. But that, to me, is what changed once they signed Dan Moore. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe what I'm hearing initially coming out of the combine, it's not necessarily direct decision makers. Maybe it's individuals who are making personnel evaluations on Cam Ward who are like most people in the league who say, man, I really wish it was the 2024 class of quarterbacks and not the 2025 class. Man, this isn't the year to get a quarterback. Maybe it's next year, or maybe it's 2027. Believe it or not, that's most of the league when it comes to this quarterback class. That doesn't mean that the Titans aren't going to take him. Again, when you look at all the pieces of information, it's, are they comfortable, returning to the Levis experience? I think the answer to that is no. Are they in on the multitude of veteran quarterbacks that have signed elsewhere? The answer to that was no. Are they in on potentially trading for a bridge starter? Up until now, I have not heard from any team that, hey, the Titans are burning up the phone trying to acquire a veteran bridge starting quarterback. Is it Kirk Cousins? Are they waiting around to see if Kirk Cousins comes loose? No, it felt like Cleveland is really the team that is really circling Kirk Cousins. And when you talk to the Falcons, it really feels like the Falcons are sitting there staring at Cleveland. So when you add all that up, you're like, well, what's the option? Like, if they don't want to return to Levis and they're not getting involved with anybody else, and they're signing a tackle with a lot of motivation, and the story you're getting is they're not signing this guy to go protect some old, veteran bridge starter, where do we end up? And I'm asking you guys that honestly. Like, I'm saying that to you, Joe and Robbie. Where are we going here? If you add all those pieces up, you tell me, what is the other piece of information I'm missing here that tells you it's not Cam Ward, it's somebody else?
I'm right there with you.
It seems clear. And I'm interested. I am just curious about one, is it possible that the Giants still could be like, crap, we got to have him here, have this bundle, and the Titans are like, or is it like, nope, that's it. He's our guy, period.
I don't think the assessment's done. It's still March 13th, right? Like, I can't say on March 13th, there's absolutely no way that the Titans stick at one and pick, and there's no way that the Giants get desperate and start throwing everything they can at trying to resolve the quarterback spot. But when I talk to people about the Giants, when I talk to, Russell Wilson's corner of the planet, when I talk to people that are close to Rodgers, it's clear that the Giants are sitting there going, we have outs here. We have a couple of guys on the table, and our first order of business is to get one of these two guys locked down. And that's Aaron and Russ. So, and it appears that will be available. Now, here's the trick. What could change all this is the Cleveland Browns. Again, if you talk to people, the Falcons, clearly they have a feeling that the Cleveland Browns are just sitting there going, okay, cut Kirk Cousins by Sunday. That gives us our other, veteran that we would like to add to our quarterback room, the cheap economic option. And the Falcons are saying, well, yeah, we're not going to cut Kirk. So how do the Browns respond to that? They go, okay, well, if either this is a game of chicken or it's real, we have to now make our plan B. Well, our plan B is we're going to host Russ. So they're going to host Russell Wilson. Now, Russell Wilson could go to Cleveland, and Cleveland could sit there and go, you know what? Financially, we can make this work right now. Let's not wait. Let's not wait to find out if Kirk is going to get cut or not on Sunday, because clearly the Falcons and also Kirk's camp is letting the world know right now he's going to be a Falcon Sunday, he's going to be a Falcon Monday, he's going to be a Falcon Tuesday, and if you want Kirk, you're going to have to trade for him. So if Cleveland goes out there and they go, we're not going to wait, we're going to resolve this now, we're not going to trade anything with Kirk, let's just sign Russell Wilson, and now we're done. Then now you have Pittsburgh and you have the New York Giants sitting there going, oh my God, like, this is Aaron Rodgers. And if we don't get Aaron, what do we do? And you have the Atlanta Falcons sitting in the background, rubbing their hands together going, we got a quarterback. If you want this quarterback who you think we're going to cut and pay $27.5 million in 2025 for you to have a quarterback, yeah, we're not going to do that. But if you want to kick us an asset for Kirk Cousins, maybe we'll still pay that 27.5 or most of it, and you send us a draft pick. That way we at least get something out of it. Or we just roll with Kirk as a high-priced backup since we're already paying him anyway. So why not just go ahead and use him as long as Kirk has not indicated he's going to throw an absolute fit? We could make this work even though it's awkward. Could things change? If that changes, if Aaron ends up in Pittsburgh and Russ signs in Cleveland, Now you have the New York Giants sitting there going, we don't have a guy. Like, what do we do now? Now we're in panic mode because Mac Jones was signed in San Francisco. Like, there's literally, at this point, you're like, we have to throw everything we have at resolving this now because we've lost everybody, and we don't look at Kirk as a guy that we want to kick draft assets for. Instead, we'll pick up the phone and we'll call Tennessee and we'll over offer, to get up to the number 1 pick. Do I think that could happen? Yes, I think that could happen. It all depends on, I think, what ultimately transpires with Russ, because right now the Giants have options. If they have no options, then it changes the landscape again.
Charles, great stuff, man. Busy week for you. Really appreciate you taking time to be with us this week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Before I go though, I'm legitimately, I haven't had a chance to listen in today. I'm curious, like, what do you like? What is the assessment right now? I think for you guys there in Nashville, like, do you think this is, Joe, I'm curious, do you think they're going in a different direction than Cam?
No, I mean, I can't, it's hard to believe that at this point. I mean, what do I think? I think selfishly, we'll take the Cam Ward experience, and it'll be way more entertaining than like the Zach Wilson experience, So, but I mean, I also think it could end up being a big mistake. but yeah, I mean, how wrong are we all on these guys all the time?
Okay, and that's fair enough, and especially this year with this class, like, I do understand that, and I'm with you there. And again, when I talk to people across the league, universally, everybody's like, yeah, it's not the year that I would want to take a quarterback, but at the very least, the one upside here is teams do say is like, I've had teams say to me, like, Cam's probably overrated too. Like, if you look at the whole class, it's not like I did a ton of work on Shador, and I had a lot of people telling me like how overrated he was. And then I had an executive that goes, hey man, like, guess what? So's Cam. Like, this whole class is a little bit overrated. However, you clearly see there's a gulf between Cam and everybody else. It's not Cam, Shador, and everybody else. It's Cam, Golf, Shador, smaller Golf, Jackson Dart, whoever else. So at the very least, it's not, I don't think this is the Kenny Pickett comes off the board first year. Okay. I really don't. Like, it doesn't feel like that, where it's just, this guy has no business really being a first round pick, maybe the top overall pick, but there's enough talent there to feel like he merits the swing that you're going to take. And again, and I know I've mentioned the Dan Moore signing, which is a big part of it, but I really just feel like it became very clear to me that really I don't think they want to repeat the Levis experience from 2024 and 2025. And with no other options I see on the table, I do think Cam is not a bad option. He is a risky option, but he's not a bad option. So, yeah, I think that's just how I approach it now. Who knows? It's March 13th. we can talk next week and we'll be like, okay, so Aaron Rodgers signed. And then that changes everything. But this is just how the assessment feels right now. And I don't think I really honestly don't think it's wrong. And I've swung on this. I did a 180 a week ago, or really not even a week ago, really like Sunday. I felt like, they're not taking Cam Ward. They're going to end up dealing this pick and they'll run it back with Levis and some other veteran that they sign. I just don't know if there's anybody else out there to run it back to. And I don't think they want Levis to be the starter. Frankly, that's how I feel on March 13th.
Hey, I'm all in on it at this point. Charles, great stuff, man. Appreciate you being with us.
Okay, thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports, our guest on Robby and Rexrode, joins us every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. A lot of stuff there on Cam Ward and the Titans. We'll get back to that and take your thoughts on that, your reaction to Charles Robinson next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Appreciate Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports for being with us in the last segment. Joe, a lot to sort through there from Charles, but the general idea being that he thinks it's looking like Cam Ward going to be the next member of the Tennessee Titans. And, it's hard to argue that based on the way that this offseason is going so far, particularly the lack of aggression from the Titans on the quarterback front. So, I mean, it's hard to disagree with what Charles is throwing out there, just in terms of you look at what's happened in the quarterback market. He's talked about having conversations about not hearing that the Titans are involved in any sort of trade pursuit for a quarterback. And at this point have not shown any interest in any of these bridge guys. It is all lining up for Cam Ward to be the number 1 overall pick. And I'm with Charles. We've talked about it a lot on the show. Like the idea of bringing Will Levis back, to me, even on the team, but certainly as your starter, makes zero sense whatsoever. And it sounds like, based on conversations that he's had, that ain't going to happen.
Right. So, yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I hope, listeners appreciated, Charles kind of walking us through the reporting process there, what he was getting after the combine. And, again, some of this is also him reading tea leaves, but he's got a good handle, on a lot of things around the league, including the fact that the Titans aren't calling about a trade. I still have that question of, like, is there any way, if this is what their plan is, first I'd love to know, how unified is that? I mean, Charles mentioned coaches having input, which is a crazy idea. The coaches would have input on who the players on a football team would be. I, by the way, in all seriousness, firmly believe that the coaches of the Tennessee Titans do have a say, but how unified is the vision if it is Cam Ward? Were they blown away by his visit? And then is there an offer that could come that would be so, an offer they can't refuse, because the Giants decide, no, we got to have this guy. And also, like, what did Titans fans think about, just, again, I think Charles put it in good context there. It's like, let's not pretend this is like the Pickett quarterback draft.
Yeah.
Where, again, there were guys projected at the high. Malik Willis projected by some people to go in the top 5, and the Titans get him in the 3rd round. And Pickett's the one guy who goes in the middle of the draft. This isn't that, but obviously, if you go by just the grading of Cam Ward, he's behind a whole bunch of quarterbacks who have gone in recent years. So, how do you feel about that? He's just the best guy available. I mean, that's not, that's scary, right?
Yeah.
But. So, I mean, now I'm looking at this situation again. Like I told Charles, like, for us, like, I hope they draft Cam Ward. And I'm sure a lot of Titans fans do too, but it might not be the right decision.
Yeah. As far as like the trade offer from the Giants for this, number one, like, if you're a Titans fan, it's going to be really interesting to see the way the Rodgers situation plays out, because if Rodgers ends up in Pittsburgh, do the Giants pivot and land Russell Wilson? What happens if Cleveland decides to land Russell Wilson? Like, what are the Giants doing at quarterback at that point? Like, as far as like the offer from them, like, to me with the quarterback, it doesn't really matter. Like, I'm of the standpoint of the offer that you can't refuse doesn't exist if you love the quarterback. Like, if they love Cam Ward, then I'm not really interested in what the Giants have to say or what their offer is, regardless of what it looks like. If they don't, then that's where I become interested. And that's also where I would say, hey, don't take Cam Ward if that's the way you view it. And
Right.
That's a really tough spot for them to be in. So, like, I look at the Ward part of this, and, like, from the standpoint of the Giants trying to move up and getting desperate to do it, that's fine. They can be as desperate as they want in my book. And if you're the Titans, I don't really care what they offer. If you love Cam Ward and you think he's your guy.
Yeah, I hear you. But, like, I think everything leading up to here kind of tells us that it hasn't been this absolute universal love Cam Ward
I agree.
the whole way, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, how much can his visit, how much does a in-person visit matter? I mean, the film didn't change, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's where it's like, okay, so maybe they went from 50% love to 80% love, but I don't think it's 100. So if it's not 100, then I would have to assume that there is still a way to get them to, you know what, this is too good. And yes, it's going to be more painful this year, but it might have been painful with a rookie anyway, no matter how good we think he's going to be. But in the meantime, the next year's draft, I believe it is going to be better. And this just ends up not being the year to do this because we got this and this and this for them. We got all these picks. We can take one of these great players that's not a quarterback that we know is a great player that's universally graded as a top 5 pick. And in the long run, we're going to be better off. Pivot again the other way. I don't know. Maybe you, like I said, that's out. You're saying if that's a possibility, then you should not draft Cam Ward.
Yeah. Like to me, you need to be sure as you can be. And we all know that people are wrong about this all the time. But like if there's doubt in your mind that Cam Ward is the right pick for you, then don't take it at number 1 overall. Like I think that's how you get yourself into a world of trouble. If you're just like, well, we basically like him. We'll do it at number 1 overall and take him at quarterback. It's like, well, I mean, you're like it or not, you're basically tying your future employment to your quarterback pick. So if you're wrong about Cam Ward, you're probably going to be out of a job here in a few years.
Right. Now, if you're Brian Callahan and the alternative is, you know what, we are going to take these other players. Brian, good luck with Levis and Rudolph again.
Yeah.
I mean, his timeline looks a little different. So I would think he'd probably be he'd probably talk himself into either of these guys, at the top of the draft. And by the way, I continue to agree with Jared from Spring Hill. I prefer Sanders, but Charles said Ward golf, smaller golf, or Ward golf, Sanders, smaller golf than QB3.
615-737-1025 our phone number. More to get to on the Cam Ward front, plus a situation with another quarterback in the NFL that's kind of amazing to believe at this point when you take a look at it. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. This week's Nashville's best deal, Boom Boss Pizza and Watch Bar, just in time for the SEC tournament. Score half off a $30 gift card and enjoy their award-winning pizza and handcrafted beverages. Visit them in Nashville, Spring Hill, or Murfreesboro. Visit theGameNashville.com/deals while supplies last. Also, make sure you check out this St. Patrick's Day weekend, and we're going to be a part of this as well. In East Nashville, the parade. Come out and join 102.5 The Game and 5 Points at Boston Commons for the official Nashville St. Patrick's Day parade presented by Aer Lingus, kicking off at 10 a.m. this Saturday. Live Irish music, drink specials, family fun all day long. We'll be out there 9 to 11 a.m. With giveaways and your chance to win concert tickets as well. So make sure you join us for that. Joe, you'd like to address Kuharski real quickly here on the program.
Well, I just want to read Jack from Nashville on the text line and driven by WilsonCountyHunted.com, 615-737-1025. He texted and said, Joe, I listened to yesterday's show late last night. I just wanted to let you know we're on your side versus PK. For him to misquote your story so confidently, then backtrack by saying, quote, we like to exaggerate for fun, was absolutely ridiculous. For someone that gets so hung up on reporting and exact wordings of things, for him to say that was so childish. Thank you, Jack from Nashville. I'd like to say, when I say bless your heart, I mean it in the most sincere way possible. And I have sent that text to Kuharski, and I sent a profane message to go with it.
You did.
And I just want you to know, I tagged Robby on it too. Robby could have cleaned this up yesterday, but Robby had a chance to be on the right side of history, but he prefers.
I don't do that.
Yeah, sometimes you got to take a stand, man.
No,
you got to take a stand.
I like watching you squirm, whether it's with Kuharski or Stillman. It's one of my great joys in life. And I'm not going to rob myself of it.
My health. Yeah, who cares about my health? As long as you get some enjoyment out of it, it's fine.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you make of the Kirk Cousins stuff? So it looks like Cousins is going to be on Atlanta's roster. They've got until 5 days into the new league year, or they owe him a $10 million roster bonus. Well, it looks like he's going to be there. And either he's going to be the backup quarterback for Michael Penix, or eventually they're going to be able to work out a trade and give some compensation for him. I did not think it would go this way. I thought that he would eventually force himself out. He's not done that. What do you make of the Kirk Cousins situation in Atlanta?
Well, the Falcons are – I said it earlier in the show. I don't think it's the craziest idea. You like Penix. You had to make the switch last year. Cousins was fading badly. Penix played pretty well. Are you totally sold that Penix is the guy and is going to be good this year? Are you totally sold that last year meant Cousins is toast? It's not. Is it the worst thing in the world to have two viable options at starting quarterback? Also, I think that you could look at this like the Falcons are taking the financial hit to potentially, because they potentially believe they're going to get draft capital out of Cleveland. And I can definitely see Stefanski wanting Cousins to run his offense. I can totally see that. I don't hate that at all for Cousins or for the Browns. So the Falcons, they're obviously they're taking this financial hit, but maybe they do end up benefiting from it in terms of their team building. And Cousins does get a fresh start. I don't know. I think either scenario makes sense to me, even though, we were sure, and so was Charles, that, they were just going to release him.
Atlanta holds the 15th pick in this year's draft. You just get Jackson Dart, go along with it. You have Penix, Cousins, and Dart. Just make sure that quarterback position is solidified.
That would mean that 2 of your 3 quarterbacks have X in their name. It's kind of cool.
That is kind of cool. That's going to do it
That's
for us
what really
today
matters
here on the program. We'll have a lot more to get into tomorrow on the Cam Ward front. A lot of things that Charles threw out there that very interesting. If you missed it, go check out our podcast, Robby and Rexrode. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Chasing Big Joe is coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.